Hey everyone. Just wanted to see if you guys can hear us. No technical issues. Feel free to let us know.
Hey,
Um,
hello. No,
okay.
I think we're good. We can
So
dive right in.
okay. So welcome to week 19 of the G5A Virtual Cinema Club. Every week we watch we watch two films by the same filmmaker, and then we meet on Saturday evening, Saturday mornings here in California to discuss some common threads between the films, whether they're from a filmmaking standpoint, whether they're from a thematic standpoint, or just maybe even a from something that stems from the filmmaker for that matter. So we try to find those evolutions of ideas, common threads in the technique and craft as well. And so yeah, welcome. I'm Neeraj, by the way. I'm a cinematographer based here in California.
I'm Ishan, and I work at G5A.
So
We're good to go.
yeah.
So this week, do you wanna introduce the director
Yeah.
here, and then we can
So we saw
talk
two
about the film.
films. We saw two films by the director Apichatpong Weerasethakul, I guess is how you pronounce it. We can just refer to him as Apichatpong. Um, the two films were, Uncle Boonmee, who recalls his past lives, and then the second film was Tropical Malady. So we watched these two films. Um, I guess we can start with Tropical Malady since it's the older film, and then work our way to Uncle
Yeah,
Boonmee.
yeah,
Um, so
that makes sense.
Yeah, Tropical Malady is this film. It kind of takes it has like kind of two parts to it, I guess.
Two parts. Yeah,
And so the first half is like kind of like this, budding romance between these two characters, these two men. One being a soldier, and I guess I wasn't entirely sure what the other one does. I guess it's just like in the countryside. So
yeah.
um,
I don't think they don't really specify what
yeah,
what he does.
yeah, it's just like a countryside romance of between this soldier and this like other guy. um and then the second half of the film dives into this darker forest world of sorts, where it starts
Yeah,
going into ideas of this spirit that's kind of haunting these villages, and this soldier who's lost trying to hunt after, I guess, these um this spirit, or whatever it might be,
yeah.
this
I mean,
mysterious
I think
force.
yeah, I think that's sort of just like the general theme, right, that we see in both films is sort of just like
Hmm.
questioning, or I guess just like um investigating um what is, I guess, just the definition of life in that sense, right? Like what is, because there's so many. I mean, like we have this sense that, like, it starts at one point and then ends at one point, but I feel like he sort of suggesting that there's more um than meets the eye in that
Hmm.
sense, and like in that kind of thing. And I think you see that more in the second film that we'll come to, but I think in this one for sure it sort of like leads up to that,
Yeah.
right? Because I think in the beginning you sort of set up, um it feels very normal, right?
Hmm.
Whatever that means. Where it's just about these two characters and sort of just like how they meet, how they get to know each other, sort of like become comfortable with one another and vulnerable with one another, and then also, um I think at the end they sort of like go their separate ways. I forget what the specifics, I think. But it sort of has that like tone. It's like
Yeah,
very dreamy.
I think there's that one
um
moment where they kind of go into that cave with that woman
mm,
to pray and
yeah,
whatnot, and I think
yeah,
that's where the film kind of takes on that, like, kind of that supernatural aspect
yeah,
to it, which then gets completely explored in the second half, with
exactly.
um and like the themes that I guess Apichatpong is I guess interested in, because from what it seems like the supernatural is very important to like Thai culture, I think.
Yeah, yeah, or
Um,
at least like just the relationship between the, I guess, physical and like spiritual,
yeah,
you know, and
exactly.
like what is that? Because I think they're very, or at least in the films, they're very like blasé about stuff that you might, you know, otherwise freak out a little bit
Mhm.
about. You
Mhm.
know, like if you just saw this, because I think there's that like shot at the end, um, you know, where the army guy, like he's been in the trees this whole time, right, for the most part, and then at the end they sort of like switch places, and then the tiger spirit is on the tree branch, and then he's on the ground.
Mhm.
Um, you know, and like it feels very, I don't know, like magical,
Mhm.
not real, all of that stuff, but it's sort of received very normally, I feel
Mhm.
like, or it's
Yeah.
just like accepted very easily,
Yeah, there's
which
no
I thought was kind of interesting.
and I think that has to go to kind of the way that he shoots things, you know? They're
Hmm.
very it's very matter of fact. He's not trying to make this a big like
Yeah.
spectacle moment like a, like it's not like, like I mean, just to like be like the exact opposite end. It's not like a Beauty and the Beast where it's like the beast turns into this magical creature or whatever, you know what I mean, and comes back to human
Yeah.
form,
Yeah.
and there's like these swooping camera moves or whatever, and there's no showmanship to it. It's very
Mm.
it's
Yeah. I
it's
think that's a good word to describe it.
yeah, it's very restrained, very straightforward, very matter of fact, I think. And I think you realize that with a lot of his like his entire like this movie, but especially with Uncle Boonmee, I think, is like how it's just like kind of like these. It's also like what I was saying with a few weeks ago. I think was the efficiency in how they shoot. It's very
Mm.
tableau.
Hmm.
It's not like a lot. It's not a whole lot of coverage of like singles. In a scene. It's very like long drawn out, long takes where kind of the actors just like kind of dive into the characters and just stay there, and even as the
Yeah. Yeah.
viewer you're not breaking away from it all that often, you're just kind of there with it. So yeah.
Yeah. No, for sure. I mean, I think that like that also adds a bunch. I mean, just to um, I guess how like your interaction or like experience with the film as well, right? Because it sort of subverts what you might normally expect to
Yeah.
happen. Because I think even, I mean, there's so many scenes, right, like where you'd expect like the direction choice to be something else, but
Mm-hmm.
instead it's almost like a non-choice, right? Like the choice is to hold
Mm-hmm.
that position, and I think that's something um, that again, I mean, I think we like see it in a lot of um, like films now,
Mm-hmm.
and also I think I remember talking to you about this with, I'm just trying to remember which film. I think it was in Parasite actually.
Could be,
You
yeah.
know, where at the end there's sort of that like reunion, that like dream reunion sequence,
Mm-hmm.
and you know, you like I remember like thinking if this was sort of a like a Western film, like you'd be in right in there, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like you'd be in up close, and but in this situation we're still like at a distance, and I feel like that style
Yeah.
is seems to be kind of um, prevalent a bunch, like in a lot of the Eastern films that we've seen.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree.
Uh,
I think also like to just speaking to the pacing of it, I think because
mm,
I think you kind of touched on it. I think it also like just the slow drawn out pacing. I think it kind of also mirrors the pace of life that these characters are going through in the countryside.
yeah,
Like for
yeah,
them,
yeah,
a day on the farm, for example, and like if we talk about Uncle Boonmee for a second, a day on the farm is like a very slow drawn out day where you take a little break, and it's like and I feel like you feel as a viewer, you feel the drag of the day, you know,
mm,
or the kind of the moments of inaction, you know.
yeah, yeah.
Um,
But it's also, I guess, just that like wistfulness. I
mhm.
think of just like time passing, and you sort of just like letting it open out in front of you.
Yeah, but we
You
can't
know,
escape it
and
as a viewer is the thing.
yeah, yeah.
Even because of a cut, like even a cut allows you to escape it for a moment, but with
Mm,
this, you're just like, I guess you're just
you're
like,
just in that. Yeah.
yeah, and sometimes you're like, I remember like at moments I was like waiting for them to do something exciting or move the story
Mm,
forward.
yeah.
And it just like from a, it oh, sorry guys. It
Nice.
it makes you yeah, it just it kind of almost like says like stay here, just wait.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
Um
And I think also like um, I feel like what that does is, and damn, I'm just blanking on what I just like lost my train
no
of
worries.
thought. Yeah, but no, what I was saying is that I feel like that's so true, and then also adding to that, some of the events, that might seem like something's happening, or this is like a big momentous moment, are
Mhm.
sort of approached very nonchalantly. So it's sort of
Mhm.
just like continue. It sort of like adds or like reinforces that, I feel,
Mhm.
because I'm just like thinking, like even I mean, just I guess staying with Uncle Boonmee, like when they're at the dinner table, right, and his wife's ghost just like appears.
Mhm. Mhm.
I was like, whoa, what's going on? This is like I was sort of like taken aback in the beginning,
Right.
but then they were just like, oh hey, like, is that you? And I was like, I guess that's okay.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
I guess maybe my reaction was kind of uh
Exactly.
too much, and then the sun shows up
Yeah.
in a non-human body, and I'm like, oh, all right,
Yeah, it's like like the
what's
characters
going on?
accept it.
Yeah,
It's not
exactly.
there's
Like
no
without, like,
question to
there's
it.
not even a beat.
Yeah.
It's just
Exactly.
like,
Which is really
which
interesting.
is, yeah.
Um did we have any questions from anyone about, some of the stuff we've been talking about yet or not really?
No,
Okay,
no,
cool.
not yet, not yet.
Um
I'm sure
come through.
they'll trickle in. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Um
If folks watched it, I'm sure
yeah.
there'll be plenty of questions like
Yeah.
we had.
So, yeah, so I mean, just going to, I guess the other thing to like question, which I questioned at first, and then I tried to do some research about with Tropical Malady, is that,
Hmm.
the soldier character in the first half, is it the same soldier character in the second half? Because,
Right. Yeah. 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 Yeah.
there is a bit of a jump, and it could be a different character because it's played by the same actor. But in the second one, he's not named or anything, right? So you don't really know
Yeah.
who he is.
You also don't really know why
Hmm.
he's there, right?
Why
Like,
he's
is
in
he
the
lost?
forest. Yeah.
Yeah, like sort of just thrown in there with him, and with
Hmm.
no almost no context.
And there's very little dialogue through that entire second half of the film. It's mostly just
Yeah,
a series of like beats and moments and actions, really.
yeah, and also that I guess you got those like like just drawings, right? Like
Yeah,
traditional, which kind of like they kind of remind me of like cave drawings. I don't know if
yeah, they did.
they were, but like they sort of have that like that texture and that
Right,
sort of, I don't know, like just
mythological quality to it.
yeah, yeah, exactly. Just like the style with which like the tiger's
Hmm.
drawn, and then there was like, I think the first one was, or maybe it's the second one. There's a tiger, and then there's sort of like a being inside.
Hmm.
Um,
Yeah,
so like quite fascinating images. And then it's sort of like very much like we sort of take that step very strongly into this like folk, um or like not fantasy, but like a fable
yeah,
kind of zone, which was interesting, and I mean for the most part unexpected, but then you sort of like, as it opens out, you see some of the breadcrumbs that he dropped right in the first bit,
hmm
um and then it sort of just like ties in to this like
yeah,
world.
yeah, exactly. Because in the first bit, they do talk about, like kind of the problems that the village is seeing and like towards the
Yeah.
end of it and stuff. And so they could very well be connected stories, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I'm trying to think what else about like at least Tropical Malady that like immediately comes to mind. I think like also Tropical Malady as a film, it was shot like compared to like when you get to Uncle Boonmee, you'll realize like kind of the extreme end of like the restraint in terms of like
Mm.
shots and coverage and editing and all of that. Like I think Tropical Malady
Yeah.
still had a decent amount of like pacing to it and energy to it. Like for
Yeah.
example, even the sequence where he's sitting in the bus and he sees the girl across from him and it cuts back and forth. So
Yeah.
there's definitely like a series of moments where like there like at least like I think it's also like an older film, so it's like probably like at the start or somewhere near the start of his career compared to like Uncle Boonmee, which is 2015. I think,
Yeah. Yeah.
or in the mid 2010s, so a little bit
But
later on.
it feels I remember I looked checking again when it came out, and it doesn't feel like that weirdly. I don't know if you felt the same way, but I think like both films sort of felt like nos I don't want to say old, but like just like nostalgic, like just like about time
Yeah,
before,
yeah, I
you
agree.
know.
I think it's
And like that was something that was just like kind of I like it wasn't strange or anything, but it's just like when I found out like oh that it was from
mhm.
2004 and 2015, it just like seemed odd.
Yeah.
Like
No,
I
some
was
of it
surprised.
reminded me of like, for example, like in a way, some of it just like stylistically just reminded me of like, for example, even like something older even, than like
Mm-hmm.
the 2000s. Like, I mean,
For
even like
sure,
to an
for
extent
sure.
like
Like
something like
nine.
Rashomon, for example, you
Mm-hmm.
know?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
It kind of reminded me of some of that, like especially in Uncle Boonmee when you have the princess sequence.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, yeah, exactly. That's right.
Yeah.
It definitely felt more um like at home with those films or like films of that time,
And you don't
which is I
yeah.
mean an interesting.
And you don't really see like modern, like as far as I'm aware, you don't really see any like modern technology. Like there's no use of cell phones, there's no use of like
Yeah, yeah.
devices that really
I think the most is
place
like the
it.
karaoke or the
Yeah.
singing bit,
Yeah, but it
right?
never really
And then even
places.
when they go to the mall,
Hmm.
I think like the TVs are like those box,
Yeah.
like the old um like
Yeah.
classic box TVs.
Yeah. So I feel like there's like a certain like in that sense I mean, in a way, he doesn't use very many devices, at least that like are like, okay, this is like 2005. Like like immediately just
Yeah,
based on
yeah.
the
It doesn't.
types of props being used.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, I
Um.
think I think even in I'm just trying to think like what in topical malady specifically. Like it's I mean, like in the bus. I'm just
Mhm.
thinking she answers her phone, right? Like that's it. But it's like an old like one of those like
Yeah.
unbreakable Nokia phones.
Yeah. Yeah.
I
Yeah.
feel like,
Exactly. Exactly.
um, and so like it's sort of it's is more um recent, but it doesn't necessarily give off that feeling that it's as recent as it is.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
which is like an interesting. I mean, it definitely feels like like a conscious choice
Yeah.
given the subject matter.
Yeah. Exactly.
Um, and I feel like I mean, what I think this is specifically at least with Tropical Malady is that it feels so grounded, in reality, quote unquote. Um, and then you sort of just like go off on
Mhm.
these
Right.
like this like fantastical
Mhm.
sort of tangent. Whereas I feel like Uncle Boonmee just picks up from there,
Mhm.
and then like it doesn't necessarily like it's happening in on some farm, but it just like straight off the bat, like you see the wife come back, and then you see the son and like all of that. So it's just like from the
Yeah.
get go,
Yeah.
which is
Exactly.
like an interesting
Right. Yeah. I guess we can switch over to Uncle Boonmee now. I guess just because we have been kind of bouncing
yeah,
back and forth.
bouncing back and forth. Yeah, sure, sure.
So Uncle Boonmee, basically the film. is about Uncle Boonmee, obviously, and he's nearing the end of his life. He has a he has a kidney problem,
Yeah.
get kidney failure. He has to get dialysis every like I guess it's every day, right? Dialysis. It seemed like
Yeah,
it was
yeah.
every day.
Basically, he needs somebody. He needs somebody like staying with him
Exactly.
to like do the kidney cleaning
Yeah.
as it's referred to.
And then as, he's nearing the end of his life, he decides to go to the countryside with, his sister-in-law and Tong. I guess it was his sister-in-law's. I didn't really understand the relationship there. What was Tong's?
Yeah, no, I didn't. To be honest, I didn't understand the sister-in-law bit until the wife showed up.
Yeah,
I thought
exactly.
they
Yeah,
were,
yeah, yeah.
I thought they were married
Yeah.
to
Um,
begin with.
and so they're there, and then one evening while they're having dinner, the the ghost of his wife who'd passed away many years ago shows up, and then a few moments later, his long lost son, who'd I guess disappeared. They don't really explain why. I think
Yeah,
um,
yeah.
he disappeared, but he comes back, and he's no longer a human, but he's I guess they don't say he's a
Lion monkey.
yeah, lion
What
monkey.
is it?
I guess he's a monkey of sorts. But
Yeah,
he's kind of
but
this
it also like didn't really
supernatural.
explain that. He said like, yeah, I had to mate uh, with a lion monkey, and so now I am a lion monkey. I'm
Yeah,
paraphrasing, obviously, but that's sort of what it
yeah,
they seem to say, and I was like, okay,
yeah. You just have to
sure,
accept it. So,
cool.
so yeah, and then it goes into over the next few days where Boonmee kind of, as the title suggests, recalls his past lives, and you know, and then eventually he passes away, and you know, I think you're seeing everything through the lens of Jen and Tong. These
Yeah,
two
yeah.
kind of
Oh, also, I just remembered in Tropical Malady, it says like um he says that yeah, my uncle could recall his past lives
yeah.
like for 200 years. So like I feel that there is that like link between
Yeah, either there's
um
like an actual link or it's just like a thematic link, but it seems like something
yeah,
that keeps coming back. So just to like also like add context to Uncle Boonmee, it's based on a book where I guess this person who wrote the book um recorded, people from the villages that recall their past lives, and
yeah,
he wrote down records, I guess, of what these past lives were, and one of these men were Uncle Boonmee,
right.
essentially.
But also it was sort of like it was like more explicit and also like separated, right? Like this is
Yeah,
this account, second account, third account.
exactly.
Whereas I think in the film it's a bit more like it just like flows from one into the other without
Yeah.
necessarily saying, "Hey, we've moved on to
Yeah.
somebody else, like a different life."
And I think that goes
And
to the stream of consciousness type of, approach that this Apichatpong has as a filmmaker. He kind of just lets things kind of blend together, and it's kind of like this. At times I would say confusing, but at the same time, I think it's like very intentional, and it's very like, he's trying to kind of create these different moods, I guess, to take you through the story of this Uncle Boonmee character, um, without necessarily like spelling it all out for you. Um, and
yeah,
then the other thing is, and maybe Ishan, do you want to read the quote? But there's this quote that we pulled that Apichat Pong says about the past lives, which I thought
yeah,
was
yeah,
very
yeah, for sure.
fascinating.
I mean, I think it definitely like helps add more light on just like the intent
Yeah,
of the film, which I think is super interesting. So I'll just read. So it starts. Um, so originally, the script was more explicit in explaining which were the past lives, which were not. But in the film, I decided to respect the audience's imagination. Of course, after watching it, you can tell that he could be a buffalo or he could be a princess. But for me, he could be every living thing in the film: the bugs, the bees, the soldier, the catfish, and so on. He could even be his monkey ghost son and his ghost wife. In this way, the film reinforces a special association between cinema and reincarnation. cinema is man's way to create alternate universes, some other lives.
Yeah. So we thought that quote kind of really was interesting. I mean, obviously there's like the immediate answer, but I think as you dig deeper, I think he's kind of trying to think about reincarnation through the film, and also just specifically, um, I think the way that they might in Thai culture.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah, yeah.
and I think there's a little bit of I think that's kind of like, and I think a lot of Thai culture pulls from Buddhism as well, and I think from Buddhism, I think he's trying to get to like this idea of like kind of like how everything is connected at the end of the day. I think, you know,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
how it's all kind, and I think that's. I mean, I'm trying to actually really just figure this out as we kind of speak about it too, and make sense
hmm
of it. So I'm not being the most, I guess, articulate. But yeah, I think there's something interesting that's happening there. I'm trying to like think about it right now, actually. Just but I don't know if you had anything to add to that.
Um, I think. I think that that sort of that thread is clear.
Mm-hmm.
In terms of how, in terms of like the focus is very much on this idea. That there is. Which I think sort of is very relevant
Mm-hmm.
today, is that like everything is connected, right? So like
Yeah.
even no matter like what you do, is that that like the smallest action
Mm-hmm.
does have an effect, and it does sort of resonate somewhere. um
Yeah.
I guess sort of that butterfly wings
Mm-hmm.
theory. And I think that's something that it's definitely, I feel like it's an interesting way to approach it,
Mm-hmm. Well, he
right?
says
Just sort
that.
of
He says that,
what the
Uncle Boonmee says that, that every action kind of, because he
yeah, yeah,
talks in that sequence when they're under that shade while he's waiting for Tong to come give him the dialysis. He says
mm,
like, I killed a lot of communists. I've killed these bugs
yeah, yeah, yeah,
farming,
yeah,
and he's very aware of his actions. I think
yeah, yeah, yeah.
um,
Yeah, and
so
then she says, and then sort of Jen says that, like, oh, but you did it with good
intent.
um intent. Yeah. And I think that's something that's there throughout, right, like even in Tropical Malady, there's sort of that like constant, not constant, but there's those like conversations about karma, and like what you do sort of has an effect on the like just the outcome of
Hmm.
life after this one.
Exactly.
And I think that's something that it's um
Yeah.
I think it definitely, like, while I think the films were a little less straightforward than some of the previous ones we've seen. I think a
Yeah.
lot of that like visual language, and like the tone, it definitely feels like it stays with you, like um after, because I think that, like, at least specifically, at least like for me, like while we're discussing it, like I'm remembering sort of like different exchanges, different themes, and just like different um just like even tableaus
Yeah.
of the different like scenes. And I think that's something that
Yeah.
definitely works
Yeah, I
really
mean,
well.
one thing for sure is like you can't watch the film and then immediately make a decision, coming out of it.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
It's
yeah,
You have to spend the time to, I guess, think about it for sure. So yeah.
yeah,
Um
yeah.
yeah. Um cool. I don't know, did you have anything more really to add? And I mean, I kind of touched upon it already, but the tableaus in Uncle Boonmee and how,
Yeah.
they kind of set up these, very simple shots, and they kind of just almost for the most part take you through the entire scene from start to finish for the most part. Um,
Mhm. Mhm.
Sometimes they'll, like the few times I can think of is like in the final scene, it's like you have the shot of all three of them sitting on the table or sitting on the bed watching TV after he takes a
Yeah.
shower, and then you cut to him, when he's in the back of the room, and I was like, oh, that's a very weird, jarring cut. And then he
Yeah,
looks to the side, and I was like, what's he looking at? I was like trying to understand it, and then you see the like Jen kind of show up in the frame, and then you cut and you see the two of them watching the three of like watching themselves,
yeah.
I
The
guess.
the three, yeah, which was like a really weird,
Yeah,
really weird. I was caught off guard so much
yeah,
in that, and it was like,
yeah.
um,
So like that's like the one time he really cuts a scene because he needs to, right, to show that visual
yeah.
break and
And
create that
also just to like, yeah, to
surprise
like break that thing and to make you, to sort of bring you out of that sort of like
moment.
dream like, yeah,
Yeah,
atmosphere, and then you're like, hang on, what's going on? But then you kind of just like go back into another one,
yeah,
right? Because the two of them go and have like get food,
yeah.
and then they're still in the hotel room,
Exactly, exactly.
and you're like, what is going on?
Yeah. So there's like that moment, then there's like that moment that I mentioned where they're in that little shade on the farm, shaded area in the farm. And that's like mostly plays out in one shot, and then all they do is like at the end of the scene, they cut to a close up of Boonmee and then close up of Jen, and that's it. And then it moves on.
Yeah,
Even the moment where, he's with his wife and they're on the bed and they hug each other, like even that plays out just like that one shot. It never really cuts
yeah,
to like a series of close ups, and it never and the other thing that I thought was interesting, actually, when I was reading up about Boonmee, was that he worked with like a few trained actors that he's worked with in the past, but a lot of the actors, like Uncle Boonmee himself, is an untrained actor. He's a regular
okay, just to
person, and
nice,
I think what's interesting is that like at times like there's like at the time I think actors act right, whereas this guy he kind of just exists and he's just like
yeah,
he's not really like performing at all. He's just kind of doing his thing. I think and he's just like kind of saying the lines and being the character as opposed to performing the character. And I think there's something really interesting about that as well, and the way he works with
yeah.
non-actors. So yeah,
I mean, I think that's always that's like an interesting thing, just to like, um, you know, just like talk about, I guess, the difference between like having trained actors and then sort of
right.
not non-trained, but like, I guess amateurs or
Or untrained actors.
non-actors.
Yeah, non-actors. Yeah, untrained actors.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you know, and I mean, I think that's always like, it's always like interesting
Mhm.
to like find out about it after you've like
Yeah.
seen the film,
Yeah.
and you've seen them act, in that sense. And I
Yeah.
think a lot of times like it works out really well. I'm just trying to think of the last few. Do you have one that like you were really surprised, um
Right.
to find out that the person was like a
Yeah.
non-actor?
But like
um
also with like kids, right? For example, I mean, at the end of the
okay,
day,
oh
you
yeah,
have
yeah,
to think about like children in films, right? Like
that's
there's a
true.
certain it's like you can direct them, but at the same time, I think there's a certain rawness, and they'll give you like if you explain the scene to them, they'll give you what they feel is right, and it might not be what you like have in your head, but at the same time, you'd be surprised at how like kind of unfiltered their
Yeah,
emotions are because they're not like they're not good at faking it. So like when they do something,
yeah,
it is what it is.
like it yeah, yeah. But also I think that just like in that situation, it sort of adds to it, right?
Yeah.
Because like one, either it like works really well, or I feel like you just see through it,
Yeah,
um
exactly.
um
Yeah,
which is cool.
right.
um
Um,
right, so we got one sort of comment on YouTube,
nice.
um which says the references to the supernatural brings in mythology in such an interesting way. You don't find it so often in Western films, even though the superhero films attempt it in some sense or in some way.
Yeah. Well, I think see the thing is like I think the superhero films like at least they like I yeah, they have mythology to them, but I think they like the thing with them is I think they don't start as mythology, right? They start with the plot, right? They're trying to advance a
Mm,
plot, right? And
yeah,
it's
yeah,
it's also when I say plot, they're also very very specifically trying to do the hero story, right? The hero's arc. Where
Yeah.
like Uncle Boonmee is no hero, you know, or he's not a,
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
know, he doesn't, and it's not, and it's also like not broken in a traditional 3 act structure or even the 4 act structure like that we talked about with some of Miyazaki's films.
Yeah.
There's no real structure to the film in a way. It's more about these moments and kind of
Yeah.
the storytelling of it, but there's no like, okay, like, you know, at the start the character starts this way and by the end of him he needs to learn this lesson and be this way
Yeah.
and all of that. There's none of that. It's not, it's really not a, there's no necessary objective even. There's no and I think in that sense it's very kind of like Apichatpong says himself, is it's very stream of consciousness, you know.
Mm-hmm.
There's it breaks away from kind of most, I wouldn't even say Western storytelling, but most storytelling.
Just storytelling. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I think also just, I mean, I think what's happened now is like if we, I feel like if we were watching this, um, or like in 2015 even, or just like Tropical Malady in 2004, right?
Yeah.
Um, I think it would have been a slightly different conversation, because we would, I feel like now we're so oversaturated with the superhero
Hmm.
films in that sense,
Yeah.
right? Even more, not to say that they, before the Marvel um cinematic universe there weren't any, because there were
Yeah.
several, right? Like
Yeah.
you had like the original X-Men films, etc.
Right. Right.
And I think Batman Begins was in 2000, came out in 2003,
Right.
right? So that sort of kicked off like another um sort of like set or subset
Yeah.
of superhero films also, because it sort of became like the
Absolutely.
quippy Marvel films versus like the dark DC films
Right.
that invariably did not work. But and like I think that sort of, it just became that thing, right? Like where somebody did something slightly different, um, with stories that like so many people were familiar with, and then I guess
Hmm.
like studios and stuff decided, right, like that, oh, this seems like a good model, and like there's plenty of source material, right? Because
Yeah.
there's so many comic books and so many stories, and
Exactly.
then just like this is, let's just sort of cash in.
Yeah.
And I
Exactly.
feel
That's
like
also
that's
very
like,
true. Yeah. I mean, I
yeah,
think
like it
what,
like leans into that.
yeah, because I think Apichatpong is kind of, he's reaching into like his imagination, but also more so just kind of creating. I mean, that's the thing. It's like if you think about the film, like the story of the princess and the catfish, it kind of
Yeah,
is like a short film within the larger film in a way. And I
yeah, yeah.
think so. He's really like, that's what I'm saying is like by not being like prescribed to a 3 act structure or a hero's arc or any of those things of traditional like, you know, Western cinema at least, or even parts of, I'm sure, Eastern storytelling as well.
Mm-hmm.
Um, he's really just like free to explore the form, even with like Tropical Malady with like a part one, part two, where they're like two. I mean, they're very
They're
distinct halves.
distinct. Yeah, like they
They're,
could be two like short, like 60-minute
yeah, short films or
films.
yeah,
You know.
yeah,
Yeah.
separate films. I mean, that's the thing. It's like, look, I was like, I immediately was like, you know, it's like Chungking Express. They had 2 parts to it, and they're not entirely related, but they're also related, and you feel like it's one whole movie. And not to say that you don't feel that it's one whole movie with this film, but you know, the halves
Yeah.
are very distinct. You know, there is no
Mm-hmm.
kind of.
Yeah.
I
No,
mean,
but I think
yeah,
in Chunking Express, like it goes like your common ground is
that
the
store,
location,
yeah,
I
that
feel.
store, yeah,
Right. Like, or the, yeah, that you see that this is, you sort of have that thing to like hold on to and then make sense of everything else around it.
mm-hmm.
Right. Um and obviously thematically the two stories are in some sense like similar, or have overlaps, and I feel that helps a lot. Whereas
Yeah,
here, I think, and it's not that it like takes away from it, but it's just it sort of leaves, it departs from
mm-hmm.
those, from any of that.
Yeah,
And I think that's something. I mean, I guess just my what I'm wondering is like, how do you? Because so much of what we know, I guess, is this sort of structured 3 act structure, 4 act maybe, and then how do you sort of, I mean, even in writing alone, like it's difficult to. I mean, I guess it's easy to just like physically do it, when you're just like writing something that's a bit more stream of consciousness. But like it takes like a village to make films,
Yeah.
and like how do you sort of like ground yourself in like
Yeah.
coming up with these?
And getting people to buy into the vision and understand the whole
Yeah,
concept of it.
or also just like yeah, exactly, just like do because like do you just like is this? I'm sure this isn't what happened, but like is this all they shot, right? Like obviously not, but
Yeah.
how do you like navigate that, or do you just like have a bunch of? Is it sort of like closer to like documentary filming, right, where
Uh,
you like
I
film
mean,
so much
the thing is, like, at least
and
from
then try
Uncle
and pare down?
Boonmee, like, at least from Uncle Boonmee, it seemed like the coverage and everything was very, like, precise. It felt very precise.
Yeah, exactly. It doesn't. It seems like everything has been like every minute is intentional,
Yeah.
right?
So I don't know.
Um,
I mean, I'd be very curious to like hear him talk about the process of like, especially when you don't have the traditional to pull from. You're
yeah,
kind of
yeah,
pulling from. I mean, at the end of, I mean, but what I did see was like I was just like looking online and some of the crews and the pictures and the behind the scenes photos from the making of Uncle Boonmee at least they seemed very like small in terms of crew, like no more than maybe 25, 30,
right.
35 people,
Okay.
which is a very small crew for production crew.
What's a regular number,
I
or what's
mean,
like a median?
I don't know. There's no such. I mean, it just depends. I mean, it's
There's no.
like
No, I mean just because you're saying small and then like
it seems
25.
small. I mean, I've
Uh,
also, I mean, like I did a thing where it was like 8 to 12 people, on most days,
right,
so
right.
that it's like a budget thing. But I mean, like I would have
Mm,
expected, like for this film, like the way they were doing it and stuff, I would have expected a slightly bigger crew than 25 to 30.
sure.
Um,
Okay.
but then at the same time, I'm I don't know where I was gonna go with this, but yeah. No, it just seemed like a very like, tight ship, and I think that's
Yeah,
what's
yeah.
really interesting. I think from what it seems like, at least on his website, it seems like there's, he works with the same collaborators over and over again, and I think it's a very, close group of people that just kind of work together on these movies.
Right.
Yeah. So
Um,
yeah.
I was thinking of something else. Um, based on that, I'm just trying to remember. I'm
Yeah.
blanking. Film. What were we talking about? The size, the crew size, and then like how do you, yeah, I guess how do you navigate that? Um,
Yeah.
yeah, no, 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 that's
No
it. I
worries.
can't.
Did we have any more comments on YouTube at the moment? Or...
Yeah, one more. I was just same from Priyanka. I don't know if I said that earlier. I was just listening to Greta Gerwig's talk about her process of making a film, and it was amazing to see her break away from traditional hero story and to keep this kind of stream of consciousness. Oh, cool.
Interesting.
What
I haven't seen
was that? The off camera. I think that's her off camera with Sam.
okay.
With Sam
Yeah. That's the one. I just got a link to it.
Sam Jones. Yeah.
But I haven't seen Little Woman yet, which I do need to see. But like I'm trying to think back to Lady Bird and see how she does that. But it's been a while, so
Mm,
maybe I'll have to revisit those films.
yeah. I think. I mean. I think. Yeah. I feel like Ladybird has that kind of
Arc.
yeah arc. But I mean, it's just also. I mean, that's not, like I think it's like I remember really enjoying it. I think it's a
Yeah.
great film.
Yeah. Same.
Um, but yeah, no, that's cool. I definitely will check out that YouTube video,
Yeah.
and we can like post about it on the Telegram group. If that's
Exactly. Exactly. So
um,
yeah, I guess we can announce what we're doing next week.
yeah, super exciting. At
Do
least
you want
I'm
to do it?
sure. So next week oh, sorry, she was referring to Francis Ha, which is a
Oh,
film that I've been meaning to watch
that's directed by
for the
Noah
longest
Baumbach.
time.
Yeah, that's directed by her husband.
Okay.
Yeah. Interesting.
Oh,
Yeah.
nice.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think it's on Netflix here
Yeah, I'm
now.
sure it is. Yeah.
I've been meaning to watch it
Yeah.
for a while.
Yeah.
I've heard so many good things about it.
Same.
But yeah, so for next week we're having another intermission, taking an intermission, doing an whatever. Um, it's another intermission where we're gonna break down another scene. This time we're doing just one scene, but it's super exciting.
It's a bit of a
And
longer
we'll
scene, and
yeah, it's a longish scene and like there's a lot happening, but also I think both. I mean, safe to say that both Neeraj and I really like the scene
yeah,
um, a lot, and so we'll announce that later in I think during the week. There'll be like a small like image from the scene, and then we
yeah,
can like hopefully like some people can guess where it's from, and then we can just like talk about it because
yeah,
I think it'll be great because
yeah,
there's so much that happens in the film relative to the film's time in such a short amount of time,
yeah,
and like it sets up so many things without you really realizing it.
yeah.
But super cool.
Yeah, and
So that's
also what we'll do is
next.
at some point in the middle of this week, we'll probably send over the screenplay through Telegram,
Hmm.
and
Yeah,
I'll try and give you guys some directions to just like start thinking about the script, because like we'd love like I think it's I don't know if we're gonna it's a longer scene. It's like almost like maybe 15-ish minutes
yeah,
probably. So I don't know if we're gonna have the time to like read the script for like and then talk, break it
and
down
then
and
yeah,
then talk about it. So if you guys are interested and you're able to read the script beforehand, then
yeah,
what we'll do is we'll hop back and forth between the script and what's on the screen, and we'll
yeah,
be able to do it
exactly.
a lot faster, and I think it'll be great.
Yeah,
So yeah,
and
just
I think we sort of hopefully I feel like it's the film's old enough and it's sort of seems popular enough that a lot of people would have probably seen it as well.
yeah,
So you sort of like would be familiar with it generally.
yeah. So
Um,
yeah, and then
and yeah,
and we'll give you some guiding questions, I guess, and ways to think about the script.
yeah,
Um, so that'll
yes,
be great.
that's next week, so that'll be week 20.
Yeah,
But thank you for tuning in for week 19
yeah.
of the G5A Virtual Cinema Club, and we'll catch you in the next one.
Yep. Sounds good.